Today's guest is a trailblazer in the Web3 gaming industry. Gabby Dizon has been a champion of online gaming for 20 years, and today he is the co founder of Yield Guild Games, also known as YGG. He has seen everything from developing new tech projects to marketing and business development and becoming the founder of numerous gaming companies. And today he seeks to revolutionize the way games are played today and be an arbiter in onboarding the masses into this new and growing frontier. This is the Web3 Mission Possible podcast. I'm your host, Felix Cao, and today we have a fantastic show ahead of us. Welcome to the podcast, Gabby. How are you doing today?
Doing great, Felix. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on here. I think the show, we're going to be able to share a lot of insightful things in terms of what's happening in the game industry and how we see, the Web3 and blockchain gaming industry evolving over the next couple of years. And we're all part of molding that history right now. So we're making
Right.
history as we go along here. So that's very, very awesome. So before we dive into all the exciting things that are happening at YGG, let's take a moment and learn a bit more about you and your journey that led to now being a part of the Web3 gaming revolution. So, Gabby, how did you get started in the video game industry?
I grew up in the Philippines
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, playing PC games all my life. And I knew from the very beginning that I wanted to be a game developer. And there were no game companies in the Philippines then. But shortly after graduating, this is 20 years ago, I was able to join the first game studio in the Philippines. And yeah, went on to make that the game that was the first that was ever made out of the Philippines. And yeah, I've been in the game industry for the past 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
creating PC games, then mobile casual games. I started my own game studio in 2014, making mobile games. And yeah, it was from there that I actually found blockchain and NFTs in 2017.
That is excellent there. So you mentioned that you were part of the very first gaming company in the Philippines, right? Very early on, early 2000. What type of game was that, by the way? Just so that people, the audience listening, could kind of chronologize, the progression and the evolution of games starting from 2000 all the way to today.
It was a PC-based single player RPG, and back
Okay.
then there were no like easy engines to work on like Unity. There was no easy digital distribution like
Mm-hmm.
Steam. You kind of had to do everything manually, and most of the games were still being sold as boxes in stores
We
primarily. But
remember those days.
yeah, yeah. So it was a lot harder being a team that wasn't like part of, this distribution channels in the West to get the game out, and we actually had to burn the CDs and pack the boxes ourselves. But it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was before like the really digital age, right? So yeah, it was
That's
just
right.
exciting just to be able to connect to the internet and just be able to play games online. So before it was everything was just confined to whoever was in your house or that particular room at that time. So that was a massive breakthrough for sure. So after that, you said that you went on to found your own company, gaming company. So that's about, I believe it's about March 2014, right? And you're in the
That's correct.
mobile space now. And the name of the company, if I remember correctly, is Altitude
Altitude.
Game. Yeah. So from there on, so I'm very interested because I come from mobile gaming or the mobile space myself. I've been here in 2010, 2011. So we saw the whole thing progress. So when you first got in here, what type of games did you really like work on or that you saw that would help onboard the masses? And maybe we'll see a similar pattern moving forward with, let's say, with blockchain gaming.
I worked early on a lot of casual games.
Mm-hmm.
Casual meaning puzzle, match three, hidden object. These were the types of games I was creating, and the audience was broader than the kind of core male teenage demographic. We were making games that were played half by women. A lot of them were over 30 or over 40. So it really broadened my view on like who is a gamer and who's the type of person who plays games and what kind of games do they like to play.
Right. Yeah, that's very interesting because it seemed like, particularly for mobile gaming, it really took off when the female demographic got involved in it. Simply because the games were a lot of they were pretty much hyper casual games, right? They're very easy. What there was like a special saying for it where it's easy to learn but difficult to master.
That's
So
right.
so I was curious to know, and then we'll dive more into this as we get into Web3 gaming. But I'd like to hear your thoughts later on in terms of, do you see the same thing happening in order to attract the female demographics into this space? Because right now, as you mentioned, it's really male dominated, right? So in order to really expand the grassroots of let's say Web3 gaming, then obviously we have to bring in the female demographic as well. So we'll make sure to touch on that as we get deeper into our conversation.
Sure.
And then so after that, obviously this would lead you to your your Web3 and crypto journey. So that'd be excellent to hear. Like how did you get into crypto and then Web3, and what inspired you to start YGG, Gabby?
Yeah, so I remember getting into free to play that I felt like we were a little bit late to the party.
Mm-hmm.
Mobile came around 2008, 2009. Mobile free to play, I would say 2010 to 11. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't start my own company until 2014. And by then, it had been harder already to kind of scale your game studio, get user acquisition to get downloads. And we ended up working with a couple of great partners, publishers like Congregate in the US,
Mm-hmm.
Pickpock in New Zealand. But I was thinking of like what would it look like to be on the frontier, on the cusp of new technological change? Because every 10 years or so, a new kind of technology comes in that changes the business model
I
of
agree.
the gaming industry, right? Whether it's mobile in the 2010s that led to mobile free to play, like it was shareware back in the day, and when I learned about blockchain and specifically Ethereum in 2017, and when I learned about Ethereum, I saw it as a way to program real value into virtual currencies. And
Mm-hmm.
we'd already been creating a lot of virtual economies inside of free to play games. We create resources, you have gems, you have gold that people buy into. And I thought of that as a way of adding, I would say, real world value to virtual items, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I thought that was pretty revolutionary, and that's what kind of got me sucked into Ethereum, trying out smart contracts. And when CryptoKitties came out in November 2017 and popularized, they didn't invent, but they popularized the non-fungible token or the NFT. So I
Yep.
thought that was revolutionary, and that was what really would change games. So I really dove full right in after that.
Yeah, that's a totally shift is the whole concept of digital ownership, right? And it really started with the NFTs. Like we saw like pretty much the breeding grounds like with mobile, but not to the same extent that it is now. And as you mentioned in 2014, the landscape was a very competitive in mobile at that time. It was kind of going through that phase where it's no longer like in its infancy, but it's almost like graduating to it's a
Maturation
much
phase,
more
that's right.
exactly. So here
Yeah.
you're here at the right time. We're looking at right now the landscape of blockchain and crypto, and everything is pretty much open right now. So this would be equivalent to probably I'd like to hear your opinion. Probably like like between '09 and 2011, right? So it could be even earlier than that, but we're at the
Yeah,
very beginning.
yeah, so I dove into NFTs, I would say like beginning of 2018, because I wanted to be
Hmm.
early. What nobody told me was that being early, very early, was it's also like its own different kind of painful, different from being
Challenges.
late, right? Yeah, very
Yep.
challenging. There was really no institutional funding for NFT based startups then, and the people who were starting just were tinkering and trying to find interesting things to do with
Right.
NFTs. And this is the time where I met, yeah, some of the founders of Dapper Labs who made CryptoKitties, the founders of Axie Infinity, the
Hmm.
founders of OpenSea, and some of the kind of enduring companies in the NFT space that we have today. But then there were not many users, and people were really just experimenting.
Exactly. So you're kind of like in the, ideally you want like the blue ocean. So pretty much we're sitting in the blue ocean, and we're figuring out exactly how this is going to evolve. And obviously, if it becomes too saturated, then it becomes the red ocean, right? So we're pretty
Yeah.
much maturing from blue to the pink ocean. So it's novel, and then it's safe because it has obviously some maturation during that period of time. So now we fast forward to today. I know that you're working on YGG. Why don't we dive into that, Gabby? So first of all, like what is YGG? If you were to just explain it to, let's say, somebody who just got involved in blockchain gaming, like how would that revolutionize the entire gaming space, and how do people get involved in it, for example, and what are the different parties? Because I know that there's different parties involved, so I'll let you take it from here in terms of kind of elaborating on what YGG is all about.
Sure. YGG is a Web3 gaming guild. That means we
Mm-hmm.
bring player communities into Web3 games or games that have some kind of blockchain elements to them, whether it's tokens or NFTs. And it's challenging for these games to find players because it's not still not easy to kind of scale the user acquisition and retention of these players. As opposed to a free-to-play game, for example, where you can just plug in ads from Facebook or
Hmm.
Google and get lots of installs. And it's also, I would say, a little bit challenging to explain to the player why they should care about Web3, why they should care about digital ownership. When people get it, they really get into it, and you see really loyal players that have been playing these games for years, as I did when I started playing Axie 5 years ago.
Hmm.
But it takes a while to explain and really get these concepts. And that's where community comes in. The community comes in and helps onboard players and not just help them play the game, because like there are many ways that you can figure out how to play a game, but
Right.
also why you would care about the economy, the assets behind the game itself. And yeah, that's what we specialize in. We have player communities starting from the Philippines, but also now all over the world that go into these games, and we form kind of the core communities that are playing these games.
That's excellent, Gabby. So I believe right now you have about over 100,000 members. In terms of the scholar, we'll probably dive into that a little bit more in terms of scholarships and the scholars, about over 20,000. You're found in about 25 plus countries, and there are about 10 plus guilds, right? So you're rapidly
Yep.
expanding on a global level. And you touched on one thing in terms of what you just mentioned with explaining someone the importance of owning the digital asset, and then once they come around to understanding the importance of that, then they're on board in terms of the movement with the Web3 gaming. So I think that's going to be something that like a lot of people, let's say that I'm a brand new person, I come from the Web2 gaming world, I'm just a regular user, let's say. So and then and now I'm introduced to, let's say, Axie Infinity, or Big Time, or one of the major
Yep.
games, and then how would you explain to them in terms of, okay, you have the ability to own your own digital assets, why is that important to somebody?
Okay, so at first, of course, the game's own gameplay is the hook to get people interested,
Hmm.
right? So they have to be interested in the game. But as they go deeper into the economy, for example, they might want to join a guild, join a tournament, join an esports team, become a creator. That means you're kind of going deeper into to the community. This is where the digital ownership matters. Ownership of tokens or NFTs representing that ecosystem means that you own part of that economy,
Okay.
and the work that you're doing to make the game better, to make the game more popular, is something that kind of contributes to the network of this economy as well. So you see this with the people who are getting really more passionate about the game, depending on what their skills are. Some people contribute by being esports, by being content creators,
Hmm.
some by doing work within the community, being a moderator, being a game ambassador, or being kind of a guild leader, guild coordinator. So there's many ways to contribute. And what we've seen is that giving these people ownership over their passion, or like part ownership of this network, is something that turbocharges really the sense of ownership of people within these games.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that. I think this is the whole sense of this, yeah, having that ownership, and because that's human nature, is always wanting to own what it is, that your assets that you have, right? So here, the movement into Web3 definitely gives players the opportunity to do that, and as you mentioned too, the community plays such a big role because that kind of validates that everything is working, that the people are joining forces together to lift, the entire, let's say, gaming industry to the next level, and build real authentic relationships with other players as well in the entire ecosystem. And you mentioned one thing that I like to touch on is you mentioned that there's obviously the reward side, which, and then there's the passion side too. So you're combining the intrinsic and extrinsic value elements to the entire gaming experience. So one of the things that I understand that you have currently going for you is the Guild Advancement Program. So I assume that ducktails into it's pretty much motivating and continue to keep the players and the ecosystem continue to grow. Would you be able to expand in terms of we'll call it GAP, or gap, and then
Yep.
kind of gain an idea in terms of how that fits into the growth of YGG and the entire gaming industry as a whole?
Yeah, so we've been building products that help facilitate the engagement of these players across these different games. And the first product that we built is GAP, or the Guild Advancement Program. So these are 3-month questing programs where you have quests in different games that players can explore with. If you look at our website, you can see that season 4 of GAP is ongoing. There's 12 games, and then there's over 100 quests that people can do. So there's really
Wow.
something in there for different kinds of community members, different kinds of players, different kinds of games. You can see which ones you're interested in, which you like. And when you complete that at the end of the season, then two things happen. One is you get a soulbound token achievement. So it's a non-transferable achievement NFT that proves that you've done the task.
Right.
And then you receive a token reward. A lot of crypto focuses on just rewards, but it can be damaging as well, because if you focus on reward for a task, then the intrinsic motivation gets replaced by extrinsic motivation, and people
Correct.
will just play because they're receiving money, and then when the money is gone, they
They'll
go
leave.
away. So that we've designed our program so that so there's a progression, we think, to what matters to people in the long term. First one is status, second is progression,
Hmm.
third is ownership, and last is money. And I think this is critical to building a healthy long-term community. If you really start with money, you're not building a community. You're
Hmm.
just building kind of speculators who are coming in or getting paid, and they'll leave. But status is important. This is why we do soulbound token achievements, because you can see which people have done what. There's a way for them to credibly prove that they are contributing to the ecosystem. And progression is important because people feel like they need to be progressing towards anything that they're doing, whether you're going up school, grades 1 to grade 10, if you're doing martial arts, white belt to black belt, whether you're in a job, you're getting promoted. That sense of progression is critical for people, for retention, to feel like they're doing well in something, they're getting better, and their contributions are being recognized.
That's
And
excellent.
then after progression, we layer in ownership, which is this ownership of the tokens, or it can be NFTs that are a crucial part of the ecosystem. And that ownership kind of rewards them for the contributions that they've
Hmm.
made so far. And I think the last one is liquidity. Then, if they have that sense of ownership, then people can be rewarded with something that can be traded for money. Because if you give them a piece of the ecosystem, they'll probably choose to stay rather than flip it for quick cash, right? So this is what we're doing with the Guild Advancement Program, making sure that there's a lot of different tasks and quests that players can contribute to, but have a long-term effect on the community.
I really like that. I like how the program itself combines, the internal and external, drivers that really motivate players to play the game, right, and to stick around long term and to increase their engagement over time as well. So that's absolutely key. And as you mentioned, like with if it's just strictly rewards based or money based, yeah, the moment that runs out, and I think we saw that during the when the market changed directions. Um, you
That's
know,
right.
we saw people just leave in flocks right here. So it's very important that people come back and they have much more to really enjoy than just the monetary side of things. And one of the things that you had touched on is the status part, which is part of kind of like the hierarchy, if you want to call it, or one of the key drivers. So in terms of the status, and a lot of that, I believe, if I remember reading it correctly, was has a lot to do with those transferable
The soulbound
YGG
tokens.
NFTs,
That's
right?
right.
So it'd be like a
That's
badge,
right.
for example, of like a
That's right.
badge of achievement, and then simply by showing all your badge of achievement shows not only all the contributions that you're doing, but also it builds trust within the community that these people are really thought leaders within your community. Is that kind of like how the idea behind it, how it works?
Yeah, that's right. If you look at a certain player and if you look at their achievements, you can have a sense of what they've contributed to the community. So if you see someone with 100 achievements, you know
Hmm.
that they're really deep into the community. If you see someone who has esports related achievements, you know that that's what their interest is.
Right.
If you see someone who's playing only big time, for example, you know that they're very passionate about that game. And then games will be able to design offers for people who have a particular interest. It might be that if you are an esports player and you have the badges to prove it, come
Hmm.
into the game and we'll give you a free weapon, for example,
Perfect.
or we'll give you a tournament entry. So your badges become a signal for what's interesting for games, and then they can use it as markers for user acquisition as well, so
Hmm.
that they can get targeted players into their own ecosystems.
Yeah, I love the idea of like the entire status and an NFT and in a way badge system because yeah, it combines like the aspects of the status side and it's a signal to also the companies as well to let them know who are the main contributors to their ecosystem. So I think that's a fantastic program that you have in place, Gabby. So if we could just kind of step back a little bit, and I know that we you had explained what YGG is about. So would you be able to explain how it's structured? Like, so you have the scholars, you have obviously the gaming
Yep.
companies, and then you have the NFT asset owners, right? So how do those core components work together? So, and then how do you choose, let's say, what games you want to partner with, and who gets accepted into your scholarship program?
Yeah, so we have the games, we have the assets, and then
Hmm.
we have the player community. The scholarship system is a subset of that player community. Specifically, they're the ones that borrow assets to be able to play games, like Axie Infinity for rewards. Actually, a lot of the games have shifted model, and a lot of them are not offering scholarships anymore. So it's something that was very prominent when we first started out 2 years ago,
Okay.
but is not as prominent now because now games have shifted and realized that you can't gate playing the game like by having an NFT because you're limiting the number of players who can play the game. So now a lot of people are playing the games, but maybe you have access to more rewards if you have an NFT equipped. So we still have the assets, and we use the assets to, of course, attract players into these game ecosystems, and then they kind of self-organize into different sub guilds or sub DAOs. For example, we have a DAO built around League of Kingdoms. We have the YGG LOK or League of Kingdoms guild that has that they manage the lands that we have in the
Okay.
game League of Kingdoms. So it's basically a strategy game similar to Clash of Clans, but you own land in the game, and whatever spending is incurred on top of that land, the owner of that land gets a piece of that revenue rewards as well.
Oh,
And
perfect.
yeah, and so our guild takes care of YGG's lands. They play the game, they spend money, they incur the rewards, and then they have local governance to figure out what to do with our assets and our rewards there. We have another game, Splinterlands, has its own DAO, which is very active as well. And then we have dozens of community managers that are offering Axie Infinity to their player base. So this is where the scholarship system comes in.
Got it.
If people want to play games like Axie and earn rewards, then we lend out those assets, and then there's a revenue share that is incurred if there is earnings that are incurred in these games.
Perfect. I love the idea how, as you mentioned at the very beginning of your answer, it was more like a gated community, closed community, and now it's shifted to a much more open community where now the barrier to entry is much lower than how it was before. Because a lot of people who are listening, they may be thinking, like understand that you need something to enter the game, but why can't someone just do it? And what was the purpose of the relationship between, let's say, the scholars and the NFT owners? And
Yeah,
a lot of that, I believe, was simply because at that time when the market was really booming, the NFTs were unaffordable for a lot of people, and
they're
that's what
very
made
expensive. Yeah, at the top
yeah.
of the market. That's right.
Exactly. And it allowed the merger of, let's say, people who had time and wanted to really play the game and to really, be match up with the people who had the NFTs, and together that's how they would all get involved and experience the game together, right? So I just want to
Yeah,
clarify is that that's pretty much the premise of it, right? And then
that's right.
today it's really open. And is there still like barriers to that, like owning specific NFTs to play a game, but at this time maybe the NFTs are more affordable, or can anyone pretty much just join the gaming economy for the
So
games that you're familiar with?
So most games now have a free-to-play component because they
Okay.
want you to be able to download and play the game without any barriers. and then usually there's kind of different gameplay or different content or access to the rewards that gets unlocked if you are playing or if you buy NFTs within that ecosystem.
Got it. Perfect. Yeah, I think this pretty much democratizing the entire entry into the gaming space is really going to help it really help it explode, especially if we're looking for mass adoption of retail to enter our space. We need to make it as simple and as easy as possible to for people to onboard. So that's definitely a good thing that things are definitely opening up in that regards. So why don't we kind of like shift gears right now and talk about more between Web 2 and Web 3 in terms of the gaming. We could look at the center and that'd be Web 2.5. But a lot of people right now, they're sitting on the sidelines in Web 2. They're wondering, is it even worth it to even get involved in this? This includes both sides, from both the user side and for the companies as well. So my question, Gabby, is like we've seen a lot of pushback against NFTs from traditional gaming companies and Web 2 gamers too. So from your perspective, where are we at in terms of converging or bringing together the Web 2 gaming over to Web 3? So I'd love to hear your thoughts
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah, I think a lot of pushback is because we haven't really figured out the formula yet for what would really take to have a lasting NFT-based economy or
Hmm.
blockchain-based economy in general. We saw kind of glimpses of that in the last run with Axie and a lot of the games that fast followed after that. But what happened after Axie became popular was that it showed game developers that there was an actual business model to this, even though it was still imperfect. And a lot of people saw that they could make games within the Web3 ecosystem. So you had experienced developers quitting their jobs at large publishers, starting a new company, getting funded, and then starting to make a game. But we haven't seen the results of this next wave because it typically takes around 2 years plus to release a good polished game. And we're only at the tail end of that development cycle. So what we're seeing is that a lot of games are launching soon or are already in beta or launching like within the next couple of quarters that will see the results of what these iteration on what Web3 based economies look like. And I suspect that when one of these games becomes a runaway hit, shows a way to do sustainable economics, then you're going to see much more opening up of Web3 gaming in more of the mass market.
Yeah, that totally makes sense because we're at the kind of like the very beginning stages of a blockchain and Web 3. So people are just kind of they would rather feel safe, kind of see something's already proven, and then get involved in it, right? So we had kind of gone through the same thing with mobile when the free to play model came out. Nobody knew
Absolutely.
how to monetize it or the business model. So here we're kind of sitting at the same stage, but we do know it's going to be figured out. Is this going to be figured out in a matter of time, much sooner than later, I believe. So here's kind of like at that very part in terms of the cycle. And once, as you mentioned, one company figures that out, that becomes kind of like the blueprint for all the other companies to come
Exactly.
in.
Yeah.
And then that's when you have, everybody just kind of join the space, right? So we saw that
Yeah,
happen
and if
in,
you're
go
a
ahead, Gabby.
large public company, you're typically conservative. You don't
Mm,
want to put your biggest IPs on an unproven business model.
that's true.
So a lot of people are thinking, what would it take for an EA or a Take-Two to put Web3 in their games? They're going to let the startups innovate for them. They're going to let someone figure out the business model, and once that business model is found, then they're gonna come in and add their biggest titles to them. But they're not gonna risk titles like Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty, etc. on an unproven business model.
Exactly. Yeah, they already have an establishment and they have to be very careful in terms of how they handle it, right? So it'd be
That's
much
right.
easier for them to come in there after something's been done and then kind of just put in their resources. And or do you believe incumbents coming in from, let's say, Web 2 through major acquisitions as well? Is that another way, or do you
Yeah,
think it will be just primarily they'll do their own thing?
I do think acquisitions will happen, but
Hmm.
if you look at the history of games, with each cycle, there are different winners. Like Supercell was a big winner in free to play. They've not been a winner in console, for example,
Yep.
nor in PC. So you really see these pocket of talents form around games that are built towards specific formats like PC or mobile or particular business models like free to play. And I believe it's going to be the same in Web3. You're going to see specific studios that take
Hmm.
advantage of what makes Web3 unique and special, and to become the winners of this cycle as well.
Yeah, I think that'll be exciting. It's so much innovation that's happening in this space right now that after the next cycle or even during the next cycle, we'll begin to see things that we've never even thought about, right? So it would be really awesome to see how everything converges together to make something that's a very sustainable economy. So yeah, I think that'll be the major kind of like needle that pushes people from Web 2 into the Web 3 spaces once some sort of proven model comes into play. Then we'll probably see a rush of incumbents and startups come in as well. So also, if we were to look at Web 2, the way that we distribute games, acquire users, and scale was, and it still is well established in Web 2. But when you look at Web 3, you don't have the same tools. And because of that, can you explain some problems right now that comes with user acquisition, distribution, and scaling that are experienced by developers and entrepreneurs in Web3 gaming, and how YGG is helping to solve those challenges?
Yeah, so in the latter part of the last decade, user acquisition kind of has become a playbook in both free-to-play game companies and like online businesses in general.
Hmm.
You knew that you could acquire a lot of users via targeting, via Facebook or Google or ad networks, and then you can look for users that fit a particular profile that convert highly within your application, and then you look for lookalike users and then just get them through the funnel, right? And as long as your LTV or lifetime value of each user exceeded the customer acquisition cost, then you had a business.
Hmm.
That is not yet available in Web3 because of two things. One is that the kind of growth to purchase funnel for Web3 specifically like has not really been identified fully yet. Like we don't have one tool or solution that kind of maps this clearly
Hmm.
from like who's the user to like what's their address and when do they make a purchase. Second, what Apple did with their recent rules with IDFA is that you cannot really target players anymore. They have to opt in to personalized targeting instead of having to opt out. So now you can't do broad-based or hyper targeting within iOS, and that means that people like the user acquisition funnel broke down. And
Hmm.
I think that Web3 has the unique ability to solve this because people can voluntarily give up information in exchange for rewards. It could be a soulbound token achievement, it could be an NFT, it could be a crypto token, but the player has control of their data, they own their data,
That's
and
correct.
they are able to give out what they want instead of just clicking the terms of service and having these platforms own all of your data. So now you own it and you're in control of what you're sharing with other parties. And if you do that in like what we're doing where it's in the form of player achievements that are valuable to the player, then it is something that players would voluntarily give up these data in order to receive something that is worth their time.
Exactly. No, I really like that in terms of in Web 2, things are a lot more established. You kind of have an idea of your demographic, the psychographic. So there's a lot more data, obviously, on the type of user that would be more likely to, let's say, use your product or play your game. And then you could do all of the targeting and retargeting, for example. Here,
Yeah.
um, you know, we tap a lot more into the community side, but also at the same time where as we talked about earlier, we want the female demographic to join the movement as well. So as that comes along, we'll get a better idea exactly, kind of like the demographics and psychographics of kind of, let's say, the ideal user for someone who really likes to play this type of game, for example. And then we'll probably see other ways to, reach users as well. And just the fact that here, the big difference is even if you have the entire funnel constructed, one of the significant advantages of Web3 is that the data ownership. So,
Okay.
that the user now could volunteer and say, you know what, like I'm part of this. I understand that there's data out there, but I choose, who has access to it. And then let's say that the user's okay with that, then they also get, rewarded for that particular choice. Whereas in the traditional system, the moment you agree to their licensing, for example, they could pretty much use your
Yep.
information and data for whatever they want, right? So I
And
think that's a
we
huge
got used
shift.
to this, right? We got normalized to just giving up our data and with nothing in return.
Exactly. So here is, it's really giving the power back to the people, right? So it's the entire, it revolves around the whole concept of ownership. So that's not only like the digital assets, but also now your data as well. So it's quite a shift in terms of the paradigm when it comes to, understanding how the digital work is evolving. And so with that, like I want to kind of look at things from a perspective, let's say partnerships, fundraising, and programs. So I'll begin with I understand that in November you held quite a big festival in the Philippines, and then you
That's
had
right.
some really major names such as Yatsu from Animoca Brands, J-Host from Axie Infinity, and you even were able to get Apple D app of Black
That's
Eyed
right.
Peas. So congratulations, that's really some heavy hitters right there. So how did you get all these people to come all the way to Manila, by the way?
So, we've built a lot of relationships along
Mm-hmm.
the way with people who really care about NFTs and empowering player communities around the world. So Axie was the first game community that I really got into, and
Mm-hmm.
that enabled me to have a really good relationship with the founders, including Jihos. Yat is actually one of our first investors at YGG, and
Okay.
he's been really blazing the trail. He's been speaking tirelessly about true digital ownership around as much time as I have since 2018. And yeah, we built a really good friendship, and I have a lot of respect for what Yat has done at Animoca along the way. And for Apple the App, it's interesting because he's always been looking for a way to empower artists. He grew up relatively poor in the Philippines before migrating to America and then found his success as a hip hop artist. And he's trying to find ways for to surface other talent from the Philippines and give them the same opportunity that he had. Although it's very expensive to bring someone to America and then try to
Mm-hmm.
build up their career. So he realized that Web3 is a way to also give voice to aspiring artists no matter where they are in the world, which is really something that jives with my own passion as well, like giving voice to creatives no matter where you are in the world and giving people opportunity to shine and also take part in the economics of the value that you build. So that's how we really bonded. And yeah, we've been looking for ways to collaborate to bring
Mm-hmm.
artists together via Web3.
Yeah, that's excellent. I think that's one of the core things in life is just building really strong relationships and friendships and really together collaborating in terms of how you can improve other people's lives. So, just from what you had explained, Gabby, you all share that same value and passion in terms of, how can I contribute to, other people's lives and really help them, or create a platform where now they're able to be able to share their talents and their gifts with the world as well. So, I love that. Just that mentality is really the crux of a strong building such a strong community. So, I really appreciate all that as well. So let's look at I know that you have just recently a really major partnership, and that's the the Super Quest. So let's dive it actually into that. So I read about YGG Super Quest in partnership with Sky Mavis, which is the creators of Axis Infinity. So can you tell us what Super Quest is all about, Gabby?
Yeah, sure. So SuperQuest is the latest product,
Mm-hmm.
and it's also a questing system, but it's different to Gap in that it ties in very closely to the games that we're partner with, and it gives you master class style tutorials on how to get into the game. And then it so we partner with the game closely so that you can get into the game and then you can get rewards from finishing these quests. So it's a way to get people deep user engagement into the games. And we also use content creators to teach these classes. So if you think about masterclass, get better at chess with Gary Kasparov, we
Mm-hmm.
do our own version of this, but we use the content creators that are popular in a game to get you inside of these games with learning. So for Super Quest, we have two quests. One is taught by Kuku, who's one of the favorite content creators in the Axie community on how to get started with playing the game. we have another quest that is being taught by one of our top esports champions in Axie, Spam and Rise. Spam is top player. He's won championships. He's earned a lot of money in the competitive circuit, and he's teaching you how to get better at playing Axie Infinity. And with this product, with this quest system that we have, we're betting that people will get more engaged by being taught in this manner by their favorite creators to get deeper into the games that they care about.
That's perfect there. So in terms of the involvement of, say, Cuckoo and Spam and Rice, are they actually teaching live? Are they actually showing their advice and their tips like in real
Yeah,
time,
so
or how's that? Or is it more they're creating classes and then the people who are the players who are involved in Super Quest they watch it? So or is it a combination of the two? Like how does the
yeah,
engagement look like?
it's recorded video. So we have some modules where they are teaching some lessons about these games, and then after the learning modules, they have to go into the game and actually finish some quests. So this is what makes it different from just watching a random video.
And
You
being
actually have to
passive.
complete. Yeah, you actually have to complete the quest in game, and when you complete the quest, you get rewards. So yeah,
That's
that's
awesome.
kind of the deep integration we have with the game.
Perfect. So let's say that they finish the mission or the task. Do they get does that show up as one of your transferable? Um,
Absolutely.
okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
so they get Soulbound token achievement showing that they've completed the quest. And for people that completed the quest, we're actually inviting them to an exclusive tournament where they can win rewards to show that they've learned the game and they've enjoyed the game. So that tournament is gated only for the people who have that achievement that they've
Oh,
finished the
okay.
quests.
So that's an incentive to actually carry through and actually to finish it as well, and that excites
Absolutely.
a lot of people as well. Rather than, as you mentioned, a lot of these quests or a lot of these programs are just passive. So a lot of people will watch the video and then they won't participate. But here, you're really guiding them along the process. And from what I understand, with Cuckoo, for example, that quest, it's to bring on really someone who's really, really green, right? Brand new, help
That's right.
them get involved in the ecosystem. And then after that, for the more experienced and seasoned players, then that's where Spam and Rice would come in with his tutorials, right? So
That's right.
so you're pretty much covering the whole gamut when it comes to the level of experience in order to participate, rather than focusing, let's say, just on all the hardcore gamers, for example.
That's correct.
That is fantastic. So so when you look at so how does like Super Quest play into YGG's user acquisition strategy, and how does it build long-term engagement loyalty with guild members?
Yeah, so with Super Quest, we want to be able to bring casual players and then run them through the system so that they become engaged players, right? So our goal always is to get people more into that passionate part of the community that cares about digital ownership, that knows a lot about the games, that wants to participate deeper. If you run a typical user acquisition funnel, for example, get Google ads, Facebook ads,
Mm-hmm.
typically a good day one retention is 40%, meaning that 60% of these players actually leave the game after one day. And that's
Wow.
considered good. And the goal of engagement programs like SuperQuest is that if you do a broad based acquisition system and run them through the Quest program, they actually end up staying and caring more about it because they're taught to and they're onboarded in a very friendly manner. They're given the knowledge to play the game, and they'll end up staying longer, which means that you're not wasting your user acquisition dollars because you're bringing people to that program where they get to care more about the game.
That's a perfect way to explain it. In a way, it's more like a guided onboarding process, right? So,
Yeah,
and through that, you're really building that emotional connection with, depending if they're brand new or they're seasoned, but they're still going through, that entire quest, right? So they're
yeah,
investing a lot of their time and their energy and really building, a really likability for the games that they're engaging with. So, yeah, because that right now is, it's the last thing we want is a break in that funnel, right? So you bring in a bunch of people, but then the key is to get them to stick around, and this is one way that with the Super Quest that YGG and all the gaming partners they want to be able to solve that challenge.
that's right.
Perfect. And so when it comes to your partnership with Sky Mavis, why did you launch the share a quest with them. And in terms of the Axie team, what do they look to achieve out of this collaboration?
We launched a partnership a couple of weeks ago, and for the Sky Mavis team, they wanted to see that the people who were coming in to play Axie, number one, were staying, and
Hmm.
second, that they were creating a Ronin wallet. So Ronin is the blockchain in the wallet
Right.
underneath Axie's products, and they were creating transactions. So that's a major KPI for them, and that's why we've structured it so that when you finish the quest and
Yep.
you do the items, you get rewards that can be claimed if you have a Ronin wallet. So ultimately, it teaches people that they have to claim these rewards and they have ownership over them, which is again one of the key principles for why we are doing Web3 gaming.
Perfect. Yeah, I love that idea is because one of the big challenges right now is the whole concept of wallets because a lot of people that was like analogous to like the signing with Facebook before. It was
Yeah,
just like an email and so forth, and then there's became other ways or more innovative ways to sign up, and the wallet is kind of like your in a way your digital identity in Web
yeah.
three. So that totally makes sense that especially with Axis and the Ronin blockchain to want to be able to onboard a lot more users when it comes to creating a Ronin wallet, right? So and also creating a quest or a program that keeps the users playing the game as well. So those two combinations totally make sense in terms of the major benefits to the Axie team. And so we'll look at in terms of the concept of questing isn't something that's new in gaming. So like how is it different in Web3 or how will it be different in Web3? So you could maybe answer in two parts there or just together if you like.
Sure. So quests and achievements are something that's been in gaming for, I would say, as long as there have been games.
Mm-hmm.
But I think questing is special in Web3 because it's our primary engagement model. A quest is basically do this, get that. And with Web3, you're receiving what is typically a tokenized asset, whether it's
Right.
an NFT or a token or a soulbound achievement marker that you own. So that means that there's a certain significance to the actions that you're doing because you're receiving permanent assets in exchange, which may or may not have value, but given the right context, given the right community, given the right economy, then these achievement markers, these NFTs, these tokens can have great value to the community, whether it's financial or social.
Yeah, I love that idea. So once again, we're combining the internal and the external aspects of it in terms of bringing the ultimate experience to the player, right? So that's absolutely huge. And obviously, when you bring in the digital ownership side of things, that is it's such a huge wave maker, if you want to call it that. It's something that doesn't exist anywhere else. Perfect. So I'd like to hear your thoughts in terms of YGG's esports program. So I know that right now is being spearheaded by Michael Vecca. He was
That's right.
previously at Hearthstone, right, with Blizzard, and
That's right.
he also signed, as you mentioned, one of the top Axie Infinity players in the world, Spam and Rice. Could you tell me how that's progressing for YGG, and for those who are unfamiliar with the space, can you explain what Web3 brings to esports that was lacking or problematic in traditional esports?
Yeah, so when we started YGG almost 3 years ago, we started the esports unit almost immediately after. At the core of both guilds and esports is the
Mm-hmm.
same thing, which is player passion for a game. And I think what differentiates Web3 is, again, is the ability to own part of the network or own assets that are part of the
Correct.
games that you're active in. So we kind of intuitively understood that esports was going to be a very important part of Web3. What I didn't really know at that time was that esports is also going through a massive shift in business model.
Mm-hmm.
So now esports has a problem with the business model. A lot of the funding is drying up, and I think it has been in a source for more sustainable revenue as well that it had failed to achieve in the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that's where Web3 economies could come in that could align the values of the player, the teams, the game itself, and distribute that ownership of that network accordingly. So this is something he's working on with Mike and his team. He's built up the team for YGG esports in Axie Infinity, and we're constantly holding smaller tournaments in other games to see which games could scale to an esports tournament level long term.
What
Yeah, so
what are some of those games, by the way, Gabby, that are that right now that you're running esports for?
Yeah, so for example, there are MOBAs like Mighty Action Heroes.
Hmm.
There's shooters like EV.io, and then there's other tournaments within the community that they're running to see which ones they would like to play. So we're experimenting with a lot of different games right now. We still haven't built a second team beside Axie Infinity, but once we find a game that we think has competitive legs for the long term,
Hmm.
we'll be looking to fill out those rosters as well.
That's
But for
perfect.
now, the communities are having fun. They're having mini tournaments. They're getting better at the competitive side of the game. And yeah, tournaments are a great way to engage your community.
Oh, 100%. We saw esports take off. You know what? Like over the last 20 years, I still remember esports when back in the day when I used to play StarCraft. That became really
That's
big
right.
in Korea, right? So,
That's right.
and that was, and people said it wouldn't work because people were at that time when it was brand new. People would ask the question like, why would anyone want to attend an arena to watch
Yeah.
people play video games? And then obviously you look at today and it's such it's everywhere, right? And it's
Yep.
massive. So, with Web3 esports, like we'll probably see the same progression right now is just kind of figure out all the dynamics, as you mentioned, the business model that can make it sustainable, and also the type of games right now that will be, the winners at that time and give the competitive edge, right? That would be
That's
really
right.
engaging to take esports to that next level there. So yeah, it's really some exciting stuff in terms of your involvement with esports, and I remember that in terms of the fundraising side, and you obviously with Animoca Brands has been one of your first backers and supporters, and also like A16Z is a really big VC firm, right? So I'd be especially at a time where the entire world shut down during the pandemic, yet you were still able to secure funding during that time. So that'd be awesome to hear, Gabby. Like how did you fundraise for YGG without ever leaving Philippines during the pandemic, and how YGG became the first Filipino-led project to receive investment from A16Z. So if you could kind of dive into that story, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, so in Silicon Valley, you previously had to be in the Bay Area to be able to
Hmm.
receive funding. And actually, it was the pandemic that I think that changed all of that because all of the investors were taking meetings via Zoom. That means that all it really took for you to get a meeting slot was like a warm introduction from someone who thought that you had a good idea. And I was fortunate to have some really good early investors that were from the Bay Area, including Linda Shea of Scalar Capital, Miko Matsumura of Gumi
Hmm.
Cryptos. And they were in our first round. And actually, I found some of my first investors via Twitter because we were stuck at home in the pandemic at that time. So I think that, funnily enough, that pandemic flattened the world and kind of democratized who would receive funding because now it didn't matter where you were as long as you can make it to that Zoom slot and be impressive in your pitch, your fundraising, your
Hmm.
startup. Then you could receive funding even from the biggest Silicon Valley players. I don't think that would have happened in 2018 or 19 if I was starting YGG then. So yeah, that being able to fundraise out of working remotely out of anywhere in the world during the pandemic was a real game changer.
Exactly. So you're just at the right place, right time, under the right circumstances, right? And yeah, that
Yeah.
was one of the key things, especially when it came to investing and Silicon Valley, is it was more geological based at that time. So you kind of had to be in that area or know someone, but it was more like a one-to-one meeting kind of idea. But when the
Yeah.
pandemic hit, our only option was through virtual meetings. So that enabled the key driver to be able to have those meetings regardless, whether in the Philippines, Singapore, or across the world. For example, you still have the opportunity to speak with interested investor, excuse me, interested investors, and see, and give yourself a shot, right, in terms of
Yeah.
securing that investment. So that's really exciting stuff right there, Gabby. So here, I just have a couple more questions. This is more related to Web3 and blockchain gaming. So right now, in terms of the Web3 gaming space, like what are you most excited about right now, and what Web3 games do you think will easily onboard the masses? So I'll let you take it from here. So the type of games that you think that just a regular retail guy would or girl would come in and play it on a significant level.
I think what's special about the new wave of games coming is that they just look like regular high quality games.
Mm-hmm.
And then some part of that experience is enhanced by digital ownership. So you've got a lot of really good games in development that are coming out soon, whether they're, a strategy game like Block Lords, for example, which is a kind of fantasy
Right.
game that has a very rich economy. You've got card games like Axios, its new version of its card game called Origin that is out. You have Parallel, which is looking like a very, very polished card game. You have Mighty Action Heroes, which is a very interesting MOBA with kind of very, very accessible theme and graphics as well. You have team-based shooters like Machines Arena, so first-person shooters. There's a lot of different games that people can get into, and they all have their different ways of putting part of their economy on chain.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, it's not particularly one game that we're super excited about. It's just that there's really a game for everyone
Everyone.
to enjoy in different genres, different play styles in PC or in mobile or in web, less so in console at the moment. But yeah, there's a lot of games for people to enjoy that will look like a regular, very high quality game. But once you get deep into it, there are parts that are enhanced that can get you in the community and are enhanced by digital ownership.
Ownership, exactly. So in terms of where do you see the whole? Do you think that it will repeat with the kind of like hyper casual games? Do you think we will see an emergence of that in the Web3 space, or will kind of take on a different form? Like how you mentioned, there's all those different types of games to really appeal to the mass population. But what really helped mobile take off was the kind of like the Flappy Bird, Angry Birds, like those type of games. Do you think we'll see a resurgence of something similar to that in Web3 in terms of onboarding retail?
There'll be some version of that. It's harder
Mm-hmm.
to see how durable like digital assets work in a casual game, for example.
Right.
Like what does it mean for me to have a sword or a piece of land or armor in a game like Candy Crush, for example? But I think that somebody will figure it out. And when you figure out how blockchain could enhance casual games, then you could see a wave of those type of games onboarding more users.
That totally makes sense. And I think this is the main thing that you mentioned was that there's a game pretty much for everybody, right? So that's the
Yeah.
key to onboarding the masses there. So right now, like over the last year has been really tough for crypto. So, like how has the bear market affected YGG and the entire crypto and Web3 industry as a whole?
Yeah, we definitely lost a lot of our player base that was there because they were enjoying the earnings that they were
Mm-hmm.
getting from playing these games. What remained is our core community that really believed in the principle of digital ownership, that really enjoyed hanging out with our community and learning and playing these games. And people knew that by having a long-term mindset, they would be the ones to benefit from the next cycle as well. So this is the community that we've been servicing with programs like Gap and now with programs like SuperQuest because when the new wave comes and there's more interesting games and there's a flock of new users coming in, it's this core community that helps you onboard these players and then
That's
turns
correct.
them into your engaged community members.
Exactly. I love the answer. And you also talked about something that's very interesting, Gabby. You mentioned Web3 identity and on chain reputation before. So, how do you see that as being the key to unlocking user owned internet? Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, so Web3 identity or reputation is tied to, for example, your wallet and not necessarily tied to your personal identity, right? It could
Okay.
be, but it doesn't need to be. So if I, as a YGG player, with certain achievements goes into a game, and then the game recognizes the achievements that I've had. That means that I've built an identity that is apart from like who I am, where I live, what country I live in, what race I'm at. And I think that's very important because we've interacted with a lot of people in crypto that, we don't really know who they are
Hmm.
like in the real world, but we know their character online, we know their achievements online, and we're willing to work with them because of the reputation that they have. So I do think this is what reputation unlocks. Having build a reputation in whatever your community cares about, whether it's DAO governance or it's playing games or it's actions that you've done within the community. So I think this kind of reputation marker is important, not just for games, but for all types of internet communities.
Right. So that's where the whole status thing would come in, right? With especially with like the non-transferable YGG NFTs, like that's how
That's right.
that'll be part of your obviously your online reputation, right? And then people could have a
Absolutely.
look to see like all your accomplishments, and it'll be like a full resume. So you could enter in a game, and they could pretty much see the history of like all the different participations, games that you participated, for example, and all your achievements in those different those ecosystems,
Absolutely.
right? Perfect. Yeah. So yeah, in terms of separating your like your demographics, where you live, what your name is, and all that stuff, and having it on chain like that, that really filters out all the noise, because a lot of people, they just want to see the relevant information to them, right? And just
That's
having
right.
that status marker is really key to making that happen. So so based on what you're seeing around the world right now, Gabby, with the new trends that are emerging, what do you think will be the innovations or narratives that define the next bull run?
Well, that's a big question. So,
Mm-hmm.
I do think that the next bull run will be defined more by the application layer rather than infrastructure. A lot of the past cycles were defined by infrastructure, although you've seen glimpses of applications like Axie Infinity. And yeah, I think there'll be a maturation of the app layer. We're still discovering what it means to build Web3 applications. Like, do they mean that you're building just a Web3 version of Instagram or
Mm-hmm.
Facebook? I think no. I think the answer is that we'll see some truly unique applications that are like Web3 native. But yeah, we have yet to see what that looks like. But I do believe that the wave of actual end user applications is coming in this cycle.
Right. So it'd be like the dApps, right? So the decentralized
Yeah,
apps. Whereas before it'd be the more infrastructures, the L1s, L2s. And here you're actually going to see something where now there's an interface where now you have this operating system could interact now with real users, right? But and do it very, very efficiently as well. And
yeah,
and user friendly. I think that's the key, because a lot of it was built from the mindset of just make it work. But then when you onboarded
yeah.
people, it became too complex. So being able to simplify the entire process, that's something that's going to be key in terms of what's going to help, which projects are really going to take off during the next run, during that time. So yeah, my last question is, where can people go to learn more about you and YGG?
Yep. So go to yieldguild.io for the website, at yieldguild on Twitter, or discord.gg/YGG to check out our community.
Perfect. That's excellent. Well, Gabby, you know what? There are so many incredible things happening in Web3 and blockchain gaming right now that we could probably talk for hours on this. I'd like to, I'd like to thank you for sharing your journey with us and providing a deep dive into Web3 gaming. The role of guilds in blockchain gaming and how YGG is making a big splash in the space. So for everyone listening, go check out YGG as well. We'll link that in the show notes below. Gabby, you've been a fantastic guest, and we look forward to having you back on the podcast.
Thanks a lot, Felix.